Day 6, and today I think I'll talk about two ideas that I think about a whole lot, and one of them is connected with art and the other is connected with information science. And the art idea is a kind of formal one, but to me it's always seemed very philosophical. And that's the idea of figure ground, and figure ground is really, I think, about not only space, but it's about our attention. And it's also about what we focus on. And actually, I'd ask all of you to try a very simple exercise. This is something that I would do in certain classes. And it's the kind of thing that still kind of blows my mind, but I think it's underwhelming for a lot of people. But please give it a try and let it sink in. First thing that I want you to do is I want you to put your finger in front of your face, and I want you to stare at your finger and stare at it until your finger comes into focus and everything around you blurs. At this stage, then the finger is figure, and the things that are around it that are sort of blurry, that's the ground. And sometimes ground is background. Now we can take our finger away, and now we can put our finger back up. And this time, instead of focusing on the finger, look around the finger and get a focus on what's behind the finger. And you'll notice that your finger will go out of focus. Now, I'd like to argue that, at least for my understanding of figure and ground, as your finger blurs, it becomes part of the ground instead of the figure. And the things that were behind it become part of the figure. And I think that this thing about what we focus on, what we foreground, and what we put in the background, it's something that we take for granted, but I think that good artists and designers don't take that for granted. I find that a lot of painters will spend as much time and energy on the background in their painting as in the foreground. I think that the background often has a kind of subliminal effect on us. It has a very psychological effect because we're less conscious of it, because we're more conscious of the things that we foreground. And figure ground relationships are like one of my favorite things to observe in art. If I was going to teach someone to critique art, probably the way I start, or how I've learned to start, is to ask, what is the first thing you notice? What takes you a while to notice? Both of these questions are connected to figure and ground. The first thing that jumps out at you is probably figural. Though that's not 100% always the case. Transitioning from that, since we're talking about attention, figure and ground, the information science idea that I think about a lot and informs a lot of my work, including this, is the idea of signal to noise. And this came from rather famous scientist who worked for Bell Labs named Claude Shannon. And he has a certain model of communication. He was trying to solve some problems for the telephone company. They wanted to, if I remember correctly, they wanted to make sure that a long distance call sounded as clear as if you were calling across the street. And to do that, you had to separate the message that was being sent from the actual signal being sent, like the sounds. And once those things were broken apart, we started thinking about or we could start thinking about networks and computers and bits of information. And those bits can be taken apart and they can be put back together. And it's a really useful metaphor for a lot of other kinds of thinking. Anyway, these two ideas might be something that I'll circle back around to. But one thing that might inform why you're seeing these other things behind me, this kind of screen captured information behind me, is to play a bit with figure ground. It's also to play with the signal and the noise. And sometimes the noise bleeds into signal, sometimes the noise becomes signal, and sometimes all the signals that we get just become noise, especially if we don't understand it. But give it time. I think all of this stuff that I've mentioned today, it's not too hard to understand. Talk to you later. Bye. Oh, and please don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment or a like, and thanks again for watching.